again, everyone. Welcome to Calamasa Insider. I am Will Kolbow, City Manager for the City of Calamasa. We are glad to have you with us this week. I realize that the podcast is coming out a couple of days late. It is Sunday, October 6th, 2024, as I record this. Normally, I'm recording on Fridays, but, well, what can I tell you except that life gets in the way sometimes of how things work around here in the Kolbow household. So, anyway, we are recording now. I guess this falls under the category of better late than never. So, welcome to the program. And before we get into our main topic of the day, which is a legislative update, so now we are through the 2023-2024 legislative session. I do want to highlight a few bills that will have impacts on cities and some things of interest in our region. But before I get to that, I do just want to thank everyone that attended the State of the City. I hope you enjoyed last week's episode when it comes to the State of the City and the rebroadcast of it. The YouTube video is now up and running. It was posted as of Thursday, so if you want to see that, just go to cityofcalamasa.net/YouTube and you can watch the State of the City. So hopefully, sometimes it's hard to see the screen that I'm presenting from, but there are some visual elements that you miss if you just listen to the audio version. So if you listen to the podcast and you want to see some of the visuals on that, you can watch the video version of it. And we also included the speeches from both State Senator Rosalisi Ochoa-Bogue as well as Mayor Bill Davis. And if you want a copy of the State of the City presentation, I can email it to you. Just let me know. It's a pretty large file, so depending on your the rules for your email address, I may need to send you a link to it, but it's about 30 megabytes, the PDF version of the presentation. So, but if you want that, just send me an email, calamasainsider@gmail.com, or just send it to my city email at wkolbow@calamasa.gov. County Line Road, there's been a lot of construction on County Line Road, obviously. Lately, it's been related to water lines being installed by South Mesa Water Company. Their contractor is Borden, so if you see their trucks, that is related to a water line project. They were going up County Line Road. They just got past 3rd Street. Now they're back by the freeway. They're making connections to connect the, among other things, the warehouse, the City View Kaipa warehouse, I'd like to point out, down just north of County Line Road at Interstate 10. So the utility work happening there right now is related to that project. Once they complete that water line, they are going to continue down County Line Road past 3rd Street. So given the fact that it's past 3rd Street, we can now begin reconstruction of the last roundabout of the County Line Road Local Partnership Program project. There will be another roundabout later on coming online at County Line Road and Calamasa Boulevard, but that is actually a separate and distinct project. It has its own funding source. So as far as the funding for the LPP grant, the 3rd Street roundabout is the last one. So construction on that will begin tomorrow, October 7th. It'll last about 6 to 8 weeks. The intersection will be closed, but of course, streets will be open to local businesses. So the shopping center on the Ukaipa side, as well as the 7-Eleven, you will still be able to access those even with a roundabout or with the intersection being closed. Of course, you won't be able to go through the intersection. There will be detour signs available for you to follow. But again, that is starting tomorrow and it'll last about 6 to 8 weeks. Some of the curbs on at that particular intersection are already done, so there are some things that don't have to be done that were already done previously that will hopefully make the construction go a little bit faster than the other roundabouts, but we're still estimating a 6 to 8 week progress. There will be also public construction meetings available. We're going to do those online this time just because our only facility to hold a meeting like that is the senior center, and the senior center has a lot of activity happening right now, so we won't be able to use the senior center for that. So we're going to instead do it online. Look for go to countylineroadproject.com or clrproject.com, or just look on Facebook for the County Line Road Corridor Improvement Project, and we'll also provide updates on our social media as well. Tomorrow we have our next city council meeting. Not a lot on the agenda. It's a pretty light agenda. There is one item that I will talk about a little bit further next week. But I do want to tell you, though, that Congressman Ken Calvert will be at our city council meeting. We're looking forward to that. He will be presenting us with the ceremonial checks for the three community project funding, better known as earmarks, from the fiscal year 24 federal budget that were included. We had three different projects that were funded, so we're going to do a ceremony for that to recognize and thank the congressman for his efforts on our behalf. And so we're looking forward to that. So that's the main event of our council meeting tomorrow. We do have one other business item that will be on the agenda, which I will get into a little bit more next week. Okay, so let's get into the legislative session. And so the state usually wraps up its legislative session on August 31st, the state legislature. And then at that point, the governor has 30 days to sign the various bills that were passed out of the legislature. So we're going to talk about a few of those bills and how they impact the city of Calimesa. Because, there's hundreds of bills that pass. We know there was a further ban on plastic bags. That's a statewide issue. Not something that impacts the city directly. Obviously, it impacts our residents, but it doesn't impact the city. So we're going to focus on three different areas. Number one, there was an Assembly Bill 2903, and this had to do with homelessness audits. And this was co-authored by our local state senator, Rosalicia Ochoa Bogue. And she talked about it at the last town hall meeting that she held in the city of Calimesa. So she does periodic town hall meetings, and it was pretty well attended. We had about 40 people, I would say, there, 30 to 40 people at its height. And one of the things she talked about is the audit that came out, the scathing audit that came out from the state about $25 billion in homelessness money spent on combating homelessness, on trying to do supportive housing, drug treatment, mental health treatment, things like that, that really largely didn't have any accountability to it. We just weren't sure the effectiveness of those funds. So in response, Assembly Bill 2903 was written. And this was a bill by Josh Hoover of Folsom up north. He's a Republican. But however, lo and behold, AB 2903 was vetoed by Governor Newsom. The rationale given was, in his veto message, he said he couldn't sign the bill because similar legislation already exists. He pointed to AB 166 that requires reporting for two of the state's largest homeless programs. Of course, there's many more than that. Hoover pointed out that there's over 15 government-funded programs in the state of California that are spending these billions of dollars. The governor's veto message also referenced AB 799 that he said addresses the same objectives as Hoover's bill, but is more cost-effective. Hoover actually said he voted for that bill and he supports that bill, but at the end of the day, we need to do more. And again, those were both assembly bills that were passed before this audit came out. So clearly, these assembly bills are not doing what they were intended to do, which is why AB 2903 was written. And the more astonishing fact on this is that this bill did not get a single no vote through its journey through both the Assembly and the Senate. And this was written by a Republican, and it was unanimously supported in every single committee it went through and in the overall House. So when it went to the state Senate, it was passed 40-0. In the state Assembly, it was passed 77-0. I mean, and yet he still vetoed it. Now, that didn't mean that an override of the veto couldn't have happened, but typically that is very, very rare. But I would think in this circumstance, since every single legislator voted in favor of this bill, it was a bipartisan effort, and yet the governor still vetoed it, does cause some concern. So that is something to be aware of. Obviously, again, that's a lot of money. And I think that residents of Calamasa and certainly the residents of California want answers to this, and that is what Josh Hoover was trying to do. But this bill was ultimately vetoed. So that's that one. Another bill before we're going to talk about housing in a group. So that's going to be the last thing we're going to talk about. AB 98, and actually there are some residents that are aware of this. There was an article, I believe, in the Press Enterprise or maybe the San Bernardino Sun. They're owned by the same group, so they might have actually been in both papers. Assembly Bill 98, its journey was interesting. So originally, AB 98 had to do with some kind of obscure dairy districts in Ventura County. And ultimately, what ended up happening was that AB 98 ended up being a gut and amend bill. Now, what that means, and I talked about this, I think, on a previous episode of the podcast, but basically what that means is that you take a bill that's gone through one chamber of the legislature, and in the other legislature, you basically completely change what it is. You change every single word in it. So nothing remains of the original bill except for the number. And so this came out August 28th, which is 3 days before the end of the legislative session is when this came out. This amendment came out. The process then went through. There was no amendments that could be done to it. So this was just kind of put out there. This impacts cities and local control, but it has to do with warehouses. So a lot of the bills that we've seen that have targeted cities have had to do with housing, and have been met with a lot of resentment from communities and from residents that the state is trying to do a one-size-fits-all type of approach. Well, this is also happening in this bill, but because it has to do with warehouses, I think it may change some people's minds. Now, the League of California Cities came out vehemently against this bill and urged the legislature to vote it down. When it didn't, it urged the governor to veto it. He didn't. He signed it. So this is now law. But there was a promise that they would clean the bill up. Because what happens with a lot of these bills, you have to remember, California, between its constitution and all the various codes, like the legislative codes that we have, the government code, the vehicle code, there's about 40 different codes that we have. California has one of the most complex legal frameworks in the world. We have one of the longest constitutions in the world. And so when you have legislation like this that impacts local governments, there could be a lot of things that are contradictory, whether it's at the local level or even at the state level. So when you have bills like this that come out at the last second that don't go through any committees because there's not enough time, and they know there's not enough time, by the way, they just rush these things through, a lot of unintended consequences come out of it. Now, again, I think that people go, well, because it's warehouses, I'm fine with that. And that might be the case. But the process itself is what is more problematic. Cal Cities actually asked its cities, its members, which Calamasa is a member of, to do a resolution in opposition of AB 98. We declined to do so. And I think that's important to point out, is that the council did not take a stand on this bill, okay? Because, again, we know that the warehouse issue is a very big issue for our communities. It doesn't mean we just roll over and don't do them at all. But even though people might want to think that we should, there are pros and cons to every type of development, every single one, whether it's a park or a warehouse. People think, wow, wait a minute, what do you mean a park? Parks are always good. Yes, but parks are a financial drain. So if you don't have the development and the tax revenue to support the park operation, then you're going to be in big trouble really fast. The operation of a park, let's say you wanted to put where Oak Valley North is proposing their warehouses, you wanted to put a park there instead, even if it was run as a public-private partnership. The market for that size of land for a public-private partnership is problematic, number one, and our location is problematic for that because our population isn't as big. Usually you see those most successfully in either resort areas or where resorts are already established. It's not like the city of Yucaipa is going through this with the YPAC, with Yucaipa Performing Arts Center. And so I think that one thing that people lose sight of sometimes is that the build it and they will come approach is a very risky approach, especially when you're talking about that much land. And I've talked about it before. The city doesn't even have the resources to acquire that land, much less develop it into a park, even through a public-private partnership. And a lot of times, like I said, that can be financially risky as well. But that's one of the cons. Obviously, the pro would be a very nice facility, right? And I get that would be a great thing for our community. But if we can't afford to pay for it, then it could go into disarray or disrepair very quickly if we don't maintain it properly. So I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But bottom line is that every single type of development has its pros and its cons. Okay, so but because we know the strong stance that a lot of our residents have taken, we didn't want to take a stance on a request for a veto on this bill because of that. The council is sensitive to the feedback of the community, and they get that. So this is a fight that we just felt that we should not be involved with. But the process of AB 98 is really where it comes down to. And the 5 issues that Cal Cities had with was, number one, it takes local community-based solutions completely off the table. It creates an uneven playing field for local governments, creating winners and losers based on geography, hampering employment opportunities, and limiting future economic growth. And that is another problem I have with it. AB 98's regulations, a lot of them apply only to Riverside and San Bernardino County starting in 2026. They apply in other areas in 2028. One of the co-sponsors of this is from the Mojave Desert area of Los Angeles County. So I believe, and this is my conspiracy hat going on, I think he saw this as an opportunity to go, wait a minute, I have an assembly member that I can take advantage of in that region that really is passionate about this issue. Oh yeah, I'm completely on your side. I think it's a great idea. Then he can go court those developers that would have come here to his area over the next 2 years, because those rules, as long as they get grandfathered in, those rules won't apply to their developments in their areas. So that's the problem I have with it, is that it doesn't apply across the board. It should apply across the board if you're going to do this kind of thing. Another issue that they had was that it proposes a cart before the horse approach that lacks science-based evidence for the standards imposed. So one of the things that's part of this bill is that they're going to require air monitoring to happen starting in 2026 through 2032, and then AQMD is going to do a report on that and then set additional standards. They're basically putting the standards in place, and then they're going to see, did they actually work? And if they didn't, then we'll have to change them. Or what Cal Cities is saying, why don't you do the monitoring first, get the information, get the data, and then make legislative changes? But people may argue, well, then that's too late also. If there are impacts, we should have done something in hindsight. So again, these are things that happen when you try to rush a bill through. You don't really analyze these type of issues if you don't vet these things properly. Another concern that they have, it requires a circulation element update. The required circulation element update is extensive and triggers existing statutorily required updates to the circulation element to now meet the deadlines included in AB 98. So there are things that the cities has to do with bike lanes and other active modes of transportation, and now also layers on top of actually including truck routes. within those and requiring truck routes to be use a certain type of route. The problem is going to be, of course, that, and this may not be a problem for Calamasa as much, and this is an advantage of citing, where we have approved the warehouses. We only have one. I'd like to point out the city of Calamasa has only approved one warehouse project in its entire existence, and that is the Oak Valley Commerce Center at Oak Valley Town Center, the Bircher project on the west side of the freeway. Oak Valley North, obviously, is still going through the process. That has not been approved. So that's not an approved project. The ones in Cherry Valley were in the county, so that's not an approved project by the city of Calamasa. There's only been one in our history, okay? But having warehouses close to the freeway, it allows for easy freeway access. It's, easy on, easy off, easy on. So other cities probably they'll struggle more to implement things where they already have warehouses in existence to follow these very strict guidelines in terms of how truck routing is supposed to work. And it has to be built into your circulation update, and it has to be updated accordingly. So there are, and ours has to be updated by January 1st, 2026, because we're in Riverside County. So Riverside and San Bernardino County has to update their circulations elements to be in compliance with AB 98 by basically in a little over a year from now. Every other county in the state has until 2028 to do it. Again, seems very unfair that they're targeting our two counties. Now, again, I understand why, because air quality and things like that and the concentration of warehouses here. I get that. But updating a circulation element isn't just a matter of just going through and editing a few paragraphs and putting up, updating a few maps. It's a lot more complicated than that, because everything all ties in together, and one thing, usually that's a chain reaction, that one thing starts affecting other things and you can't do much with it. Finally, they have two more. The requirements of AB 98 will impose costly unfunded mandates on local governments. So these updates that they're trying to do are, of course, things that are going to be hard to implement. So, again, I think that, and we're going to have to pay for them on our own. So all these updates to our statutes and to our circulation element, these are things that we have to pay for on our own. The state's not going to give us any money. And they're saying that for cities, it could cost from between $100,000 all the way up to, in the low millions. For the city of Calamasa, it'll probably be on the low end, but it'll still be in the six figures, a significant amount of money for a city our size. And then finally, the enforcement provisions are overly harsh, aiming to punish all local governments. So the Attorney General can impose, and this is going to be something that comes up in housing elements as well. The Attorney General can impose $50,000 every 6 months on local jurisdictions that do not complete their circulation element updates. So we have to start getting this done in a year, and if we don't, we will get fined. And there's a no questions asked approach to enforcement. If you don't have it, they can start fining you. There's no good faith efforts. There's no exceptions. If it's not done, you get fined. So our planning department, who is already spread thin, they're going to now have something else on their plate that they're going to have to deal with this bill. So again, the philosophy, the distancing requirements, things like that, imposed on warehouse with sensitive receptors and things like that, are things that we've already largely addressed within our municipal code. And so now, what I'm saying is that for us to be able to comply with this long term won't be as much of a stretch. There are some things that are more restrictive than what we have now, but Calamasa already has one of the strictest warehouse ordinances in the county and in the region. So, we are the only, when I tell fellow city managers that we have a 250,000 square foot limit on our building sizes. Now, I know people point to Oak Valley Commerce Center. There was an exception made, and I get that. That's within a specific plan, right? Oak Valley North, their proposal actually originally had warehouses larger than 250, and they wanted the exception there as well. And we said, I don't think that's going to work. I don't think that the council is going to be able to be on board with that, because we already have standards in place. We've already made one exception to them. if we do another exception, why even have these standards? So they reconfigured their project to comply with our size limit. We're the only city with a size limit like that in Riverside County. They all look at me like, why'd you guys do that? That's just our policy. And that was driven by city councils. So anyway, that's AB 98. Again, I think it has to do with the way it was rushed through. I think there's going to be a lot of unintended consequences with this. So those are the problematic things. But the actual policies themselves, yeah, that's up to you to decide. It's not for me to say whether it's good or bad. But we already have standards in place that I think that are complementary to AB 98, to be honest with you. So let's talk about housing real quick. I didn't plan to spend as much time as I did on AB 98. I did attend this week a session put on by Cal Cities. It was a forum for cities to basically kind of talk about the challenges they've had with the Department of Housing and Community Development that does all these certifications on housing elements. And this legislative session, we had 5 different bills that were signed by the governor dealing with that. 2 with the builder's remedy and 3 with housing element compliance. And so, of course, Cal Cities asked to have all of these bills vetoed, by the governor. That didn't happen. The first one was AB 1886, Alvarez, substantial compliance with housing element law. And this actually has to do with the housing, with the builder's remedy. Yes, with the builder's remedy. Basically what it says is it eliminates the self-certification process, which basically says, look, we are at a stalemate with HCD. We believe our housing element is compliant with law. They don't. We're certifying it anyway. Basically what they're saying is, nope, you can't do that anymore. And that session that I sat in, there's still 141 cities that are yet to be certified by HCD. And there is no rhyme or reason to how HCD handles these audits or these reviews. There's no framework for them to follow. It's all about interpretation of the law. And these analysts are basically have free reign to interpret any way they want any of these laws. So you could have 3 different reviewers look at the exact same housing element and they will come to 3 different conclusions. How can you have a certification process that has that much inconsistency with it? It is ridiculous. And now this law is saying that no, HCD's rule is law, and it says basically, and then the next bill, AB 1893 WICS, basically says that, hey, if you're not in compliance, builder's remedy applies. And they are really pushing the builder's remedy, which basically says if you have a certain number of affordable units in your project, you can completely bypass local ordinances. You can completely bypass our processes. The city, even the city planner, doesn't get to look at it in builder's remedy. It just gets to go through. Doesn't matter what it looks like. Doesn't matter if it fits the community or not. If it's a residential property and we don't have a housing compliant or housing element compliant, a compliant housing element, I should say, get a little worked up on these things, then it doesn't matter. They can just build it without any input from us as a city or from the city council, much less the city council and the residents. No one has any say on it. These are the kinds of things that they're pushing through. AB 2023 talks about rebuttable assumptions, which basically means that this is again related to the builder's remedy, in that it's so they want to allow more time for each review. Right now, HCD has 60 days to review. Now, every time there's an amendment, they'll have 120 days to review it, which means that no city will be able to be compliant. And then if you combine it with the AB 1893, that means that builder's remedy lawsuits are almost a certainty for any city that doesn't have a required housing element. And again, now that we're certified, we're in the clear for now, but not for long, not for long. And when the next element comes through, which will be more harsh, I guarantee you, because they're going to continue to pass bills like this. There doesn't seem like there's anything that's going to stop them unless there's a change of the legislature, but I don't see that happening in this state. I just don't. SB 1037, Scott Wiener, he's been a driving force in a lot of these things. He wants to fine cities $50,000 per month. I don't know if it's this one or, oh yeah, it is this one. It's SB 1037. $50,000 per month, and no regard to good faith efforts. So if you're not in compliance, you can have builder's remedy thrown at you. The reviews are going to take longer, so it'll take longer for you to get compliant. And all the while you're not compliant, you could get fined up to $50,000 per month by the Attorney General. Doesn't matter if there is a difference in opinion, or the city is trying to, deal with the comments that they've gotten. They said, okay, here's the feedback. Okay, we're making our corrections. Here you go. Now they have twice as long to review them. And all the while, the state can fine the cities $50,000 per month. When through many, many years, it's like they're using the city. This is another way to use the cities to plug their budget holes, I feel like, when they've taken away so much from cities as it is over the years. Ever since the passage of Prop 13, the state has figured out ways to screw cities over. And I hate to I know it sounds harsh and blunt to put it that way, but that's exactly what has happened. And that's why UKIPA, that's a big reason of where they are. It has nothing to do with their current city council or their past city councils or decisions that they made. A lot of it has to do with the state completely screwing cities over. That's why UKIPA is not unique in this situation. There are lots of cities up and down the state that have passed revenue measures or have revenue measures on the ballot because their money has been eroded, and yet we're still having to do all these mandates on top of the cost of doing business, which has continued to go up. And our revenue hasn't kept up with it. And now you want to add things more and more to cities that are saying you haven't done enough. The last one is AB 3093, which basically adds 2 new categories, what makes our RENA processing even more complicated. So it's right now we have 3 income levels that we have to accommodate for. They want to change it to 5. One that has to, the two new ones would be acutely low income and extremely low income. And this is intended to help assess the needs of homeless residents. But the problem is the lowest category already does that. So the state also has cut money that cities used to get, by the way, for affordable housing. When the state eliminated redevelopment agencies, it dried up a huge funding source for affordable housing. It is no accident that this housing crisis has been exacerbated and the affordability crisis has been exacerbated since the elimination of RDAs. It's not a coincidence. It's not. And then you're going to say, cities, you need to do more. Okay, well, you took the money away. Well, that's too bad. Well, we'll give you some. And then a few years later, never mind. You know what? We have a budget crisis again. We're taking that money away. But cities, you still have to do something about it. I know you don't have any money to do it, but we don't care. You have to do it anyway. This is what we have to deal with in this state as cities. So you think you as a resident are fed up with the state in a lot of different ways? Cities really are. And it doesn't matter if it's a Republican city or a Democrat city, conservative, liberal, whatever. This is one issue, this housing crisis and the state's enforcement of it, that has united cities of all political colors, all political factions. They've actually called it tripartisan because it's bringing together conservatives, liberals, moderates, everybody. because everybody that works the local level is seeing the impact. And the state just doesn't care. The state legislators, which a lot of them come from cities, which is amazing to me. They come from cities and they don't seem to even care. So I expect to see more of this. I don't think this is going to stop. We're going to continue to see more of these bills. As they come along, I will report them to you because I think it's important that our residents understand the pressures that we're under. Now, some people are like, well, just sue the state. Tell me how well that's going for Huntington Beach. Tell me how well that's going for the city of Norwalk now. Now the city of Norwalk is under scrutiny. We don't have the means. Do you think that we should take the scarce resources we already have to fight the state on these things when look at the resources they have to fight us compared to what we have? One lost lawsuit against the state for this housing stuff would put us would bankrupt us. It would literally bankrupt this city. It's cost millions and millions and millions of dollars for big cities that are bigger than us. And it's the same fight. So it would cost us the same amount of money. It doesn't matter that Huntington Beach is bigger than us. The amount of money we would have to spend on a lawsuit like that would be similar to what Huntington Beach is paying. So I get the reason and the rationale people want for that, but you have to understand that is just not a viable solution for us, unfortunately. So with that, I think I've said enough. We're going to wrap up the show. I get worked up over those things, can you tell? So thank you for joining us. The next city council meeting is tomorrow, October 7th at 6 p.m. at the Norton Young Love Senior Center. You can attend in person or watch on the city's YouTube page by going to cityofcalamasa.net/YouTube, then clicking on the live tab. I realized that for our special meeting on September 23rd, we actually had an internet outage during the council meeting, of course. I noticed that right around 5:30 or so, my laptop all of a sudden lost internet. I was connected to the Wi-Fi. I was in a meeting with our city attorney, and I noticed all of a sudden my internet went down. I looked over, our phones were down. I went to my desktop, it was down. I realized it was what was happening. I went to the ladies that run the live stream for us, and they of course told me, "Yep, we're down too." So great, of course, it has to happen on this hearing, right? But we were able to record it though. While we videoed it, so we recorded the video and posted it as soon as we were able to. So hopefully that was a one-off. That doesn't happen again. So we will hopefully be streaming as normal. Assuming our internet's up, which it usually is, we'll be streaming. Some election info for you real quick. If you work a campaign and are putting out signs, just remember that political signs are not allowed on any public right-of-way, whether it's city or Caltrans. We do see a lot of signs on the median on Myrtlewood Drive. If we see them, we're gonna be pulling those signs. Just so you know, those signs will be removed. Vote by mail ballots will begin being sent to registered voters tomorrow, so you will start seeing those as early as Tuesday. You can drop off your ballot at City Hall if you don't want to mail it in. Just look for the ballot drop box outside the front door starting tomorrow all the way through Election Day. The Calamasa Senior Center is an official voting center, and in-person voting will begin Saturday, November 2nd at 9 a.m. The vote center will be open on Saturday, November 2nd through Monday, November 4th from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and on Election Day, Tuesday, November 5th from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. This is the Calamasa Insider Podcast. I am Will Kolbow, and I will talk to you again next week. Have a great rest of the weekend and have a great week. Thank you for joining us.